For AP Biology or college biology, we're going to be focusing in on Unit 2 cell structure and function, more specifically Section 11 or 2.11, which is all about the origins of cell compartmentalization. Please note the disclaimer below and let's get started. Okay, let's talk about how this all got started and where we are with cells and what we need to know in the upcoming year. So, when it comes to cell compartmentalization, before we talked about how we're always comparing the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotic cells. And if you remember, in eukaryotes, we talked about how they are animal and plant cells, and that's what Unit 2 is all about. But prokaryotic cells were not really brought up in discussions related to Unit 2, at least in the beginning portion of Unit 2. And the reason why is because they're very simple in structure, and we base prokaryotes as being very simplistic. Therefore, we don't really need to study much details about them. However, we do know that they were evolved before eukaryotes. And I know it says 4 billion years here and 1.8 billion years here. You don't really need to know the time frame, so I don't want to focus so much into that, but I want you to think that eukaryotes evolved after prokaryotes. And when prokaryotes first came out, and we know them to be very simple structures, the thing is, this evolved into what's called the endosymbiotic theory, which is the main focus of this conversation or this video in the aspect of understanding. So, the endosymbiotic theory is a concept that comes up usually in the past in some sort of FRQ or in a random multiple choice question, but mostly it's geared towards a FRQ that might focus in on the differences and similarities between eukaryotes and prokaryotes. So here's the thing. With the endosymbiotic theory, we basically say that eukaryotes evolved from prokaryotes. And we base this theory on this idea that cells for prokaryotes are not, they don't really have membrane-bound organelles. So they don't have the nucleus, they don't have the Golgi apparatus. All of those parts that we talked about in Unit 2 are non-existent in prokaryotes. They basically are very simplistic, and I want to reiterate that again. So, the endosymbiotic theory basically said that if you remember, we talked about endocytosis and exocytosis. The idea of the endosymbiotic theory is that there was a prokaryote floating around, very simplistic. And then what ended up happening is this was a time frame that there was really no oxygen. So because there was no oxygen, there was no need to evolve for prokaryotes. So if this was a prokaryote, the prokaryote was basically just free floating around. And then what ended up happening was oxygen came into existence, and there was like a prokaryote that had this shape. That's what the theory said, and it engulfed, sort of like forming this Pac-Man like shape with the little mouth. It engulfed the prokaryote and is now what we know to be the eukaryote. And remember, eukaryotes are those plants and animal cells that have evolved into having more organelles. There is another idea that the prokaryote that was engulfed ended up becoming what is now known as the mitochondria. And there are reasons why that exists or why we believe that theory. And that's because if we look at the cell itself, and I'm focusing in on the animal cell, but if you look at mitochondria in general or plastids in general, they tend to have their own DNA. So mitochondria has its own DNA, and that's unique because it means that at some point it is believed that they depended to be on their own. And the idea also is the division of organelles sort of is this idea that mirrors bacteria in the sense bacteria tends to divide on its own, and mitochondria is very independent on its own. And the other thing too is if you look at a plastid or you look at a mitochondria, you'll see that they have their own unique shape. They have the interior and the exterior or inner and outer the membranes are inner and outer, and so it is far more evolved essentially. And because of this, this gives us evidence for the endosymbiotic theory. So to recap, you don't need to know the time frames of the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes in terms of years. You do need to know the following: that prokaryotes are far more simplistic, that eukaryotes are far more complex with their organelles, that prokaryotes came to Earth far earlier than eukaryotes, and we've come to find the endosymbiotic theory as a way to say that prokaryotes were once engulfed through endocytosis, through this idea that once they were engulfed by another prokaryote, they stayed there and they became what is now eukaryotes. And we believe that they evolved into now what is the mitochondria or plastid because they have their own DNA of sorts that resemble prokaryotes, and they have very complex structures in terms of how they look. Like we said, mitochondria has the inner and outer membrane, it has its own DNA, and these things are all evidence for the endosymbiotic theory. So now that we've recapped what the endosymbiotic theory is, let's take a look at a multiple choice question. Take a moment, read this question, pause the video, and then unpause to see if you got the correct answer. The question basically states, which of the following best supports the endosymbiotic theory? Please make sure to pause the video now and then unpause once completed. Okay, great. Let's take a look at this quiz question. Once again, the quiz question states which of the following best supports the endosymbiotic theory. We have A, mitochondria and plastids have circular DNA. B, eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles. C, prokaryotes lack membrane-bound organelles. And D, eukaryotes have a nucleus. This is a very unique question because we know that eukaryotes do have membrane-bound organelles and C, prokaryotes lack membrane-bound organelles. And then we also know that eukaryotes have a nucleus. We also know that the nucleus is a membrane-bound organelle, so it seems like B and D are very similar answers. However, we do know that there is DNA in mitochondria and plastids that is very unique to any cell, and so that would be the best answer because the DNA itself is very similar to prokaryotes and supports the endosymbiotic theory. Granted, the choices B, C, and D are correct. And if you were given a multiple choice question and these were the only available answers, by all means, make sure to select those. But this question says which one best supports the endosymbiotic theory. And one of the core responses would be the fact that these organelles have their own DNA. They are independent of the cell itself who has its own DNA, and this is very strong evidence. While we know that eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles like the Golgi apparatus, they have the idea that they have the endoplasmic reticulum, we haven't really found evidence that would relate that these membrane-bound organelles are unique to eukaryotes and came from prokaryotes. So that's why answer choice B and C are not really great choices. Also, prokaryotes not having membrane-bound organelles is not strong enough of an answer. Once again, do eukaryotic cells have a nucleus? Yes, they have a nucleus, and we do agree that they evolved to have a nucleus, but it's not really the best answer. So I hope this question helped you understand how to differentiate while you have answer choices that are correct. In fact, they might not be the best answer choice for the question at hand. Okay, I hope that you subscribe to this video and I see you again next time as we continue our journey into understanding videos just like this for sciences like AP Biology or math classes like the new digital SAT. Hey, Geeking Out on STEM family, guess what? We want you to hit that subscribe button. Why? Because we'll be producing more content just like this for the AP Biology exam and the new digital SAT exam. By subscribing, you'll be getting exclusive up-to-date tips, tricks, and secrets for both exams. Also, if you're a parent, a teacher, a homeschool instructor, or a student, you might be looking for affordable and exclusive digital products to help improve multiple choice questions, free response questions, or question bank questions related to both the digital SAT or AP Biology exam. We have them here. Make sure to check out our link tree in our bio for curated resources that you won't find anywhere else. These unique resources are designed to help you raise your score. By hitting the subscribe button, the more subscribers we get, by the way, the more videos we can make. So make sure to join our family to ensure that you get a perfect score for both exams. We can't wait to help you succeed.